really few places in the world that do this kind of thing. And it's so fascinating that it's not like sitting behind a desk all day at all.
Being a part of such an important program and seeing things that most people can't see up close, it's just awe-inspiring.
Well, when I first started out there, I was on the Apollo program, and as we say, right off the turnip truck out of university. And they just had this Apollo 13 problem. So I was on launch console for the very last Saturn V launch. They wanted a new guy on it, so they said, why don't you try it?
I sat in the commander's seats. I threw switches on it. I was on investigations. When you work there day after day, I mean, that's what made it special.
The rescue team, we went deployed usually about 6 hours prior to the launch. We had all our equipment and we went out to a staging area and we set up. During Apollo, we went actually out to the pad. We were about 1,100 feet away from the Saturn V when it lifted off. Anything in that 3-mile area would not survive if the Saturn V would have blown up. So we knew if it blew, we would not be alive to talk about it. And when they released it, for it to get up and clear the tower, it seemed like an eternity. I didn't think it was ever going to get off the ground because it's so big and it's so heavy that it just took a long time to get it going. But I kept saying, go faster, go faster. I wanted it to go because that's the critical time for any problem that they might have.
I was on launch console for almost all 135 flights. But the first shuttle launch, I mean, nobody has before or since ever launched a rocket with an airplane bolted to it. It was insane, in my opinion.
When I first started working out there, John Young and Bob Crippen walked up behind me one night and just started talking to me like we were old friends. And I remember that because it was the middle of the night and here we are working. But for those guys, with that type of a launch coming up, the very first, and they took the time just to come around and see everybody, it was great.
It kind of builds up where you're kind of following what the launch team's doing, where you are in the countdown, what's going on. That's the part that always makes me probably the most uneasy is, am I going to be able to convey what's going on so that everybody understands it?
Quite a bit of the time, it's very quiet. Not a lot going on because everything's going well right by the procedure. But when things don't go right, then it gets pretty intense.
There's like 1,000 different things that all have to come together at a single point in time, so the emotion begins to build.
It's a long time, especially after we lost Challenger and the booster problems. You always held your breath.
The last 5 minutes, there's no communications. And a lot of times we didn't know exactly when they were going to go. They would tell us when they started the count, and then we'd have to figure it out ourselves.
Once the solid rocket boosters ignite, you're leaving. You don't have another chance. You can't turn those off or make any changes once you're flying. At that point, the blood is really pumping.
As soon as they kicked in, it was gone. We got the initial roar from the shuttle main engines, and then the steam from the water blocked all the sound. We didn't hear anything until it cleared that steam cloud. Once it cleared the steam cloud, then we actually got the noise.
You can have the best sound system in the world, but until you stood there 3 miles from the pad during a launch, and this, not only the sound, but the shock wave, you look down at your clothes, and your clothes, your shirt and your pants are going like that from the low frequency shock wave. It's just awe-inspiring.
We had no idea when it lifted off it was going to turn. They do rotation because of the antennas. The antennas are on top, and that's the way they keep good communications, by rotating. We didn't know about that. Nobody had mentioned that. So the first launch, when it lifted off and it started turning, we thought it was crashing. We really did. We were starting trucks and putting clothes on, and a lot of the engineers who had given us classes were sitting there at the same roadblock we were at, and they said, what's the matter with you guys? What's going on? And we thought it was going to crash, and they said, no, that's just rotation. That's normal.
When we lost Challenger, I knew them all personally. I was up there with them, so very bad times for us, and especially me.
They would come to us on a daily basis. It made it especially difficult, not just the vehicle, but knowing the crew really well.
I was very upset about Challenger, especially because they knew there was a problem and they kept flying. And that's not the NASA that I knew. The NASA that I knew was the guys like saved Apollo 13. I mean, those guys shouldn't have made it back. And I just didn't understand why they were still flying, knowing they had a problem. And I was very upset about that.
It's heartbreaking, and but it just made us more resolved to do a better job, to dig deeper, to do our best.
There's no such thing as weekends and holidays. It's a 7-day, 24-hour operation.
We worked 24-hour shift normally, and then we had 2 days off. And we were there. We couldn't leave. We didn't have anybody that could come and stand in for us while we could come home, you know. The sink would stop up or the toilet would overflow, you know. It always happened when you were at work. And that made the wives a little bit upset, so. But just the long hours, it broke up a lot of marriages around here because of the hours that we worked.
When programs ended and people were laid off, the north area of the county got hit the hardest. 40 to 50% of the workers worked or lived in this area.
We went from 26,900 people down to 8,300 people. It was devastating for the town here because about every third house was empty. People just packed up and left. And they tried to build back up, and a lot of people didn't come back. They said it's not a stable program, so they lost a lot of good engineers.
The end of the shuttle program was the end of an era, but it was more than that for this community because we really had been a one-company town. So when you lose that percentage of workforce, jobs, it's really, really difficult. It's been painful, but in the end, I think it's going to make us a whole lot stronger.
People don't realize NASA is the overseers. The contractors are the people that actually do the work. And they're out there right now planning for the future. Everything keeps getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back.
Right now, I would say it's a very strange combination of positive and negative. It's positive, people are enthusiastic about the space program, but they're also very disappointed in the way the program changed.
We're paying Russia $72 million a seat to fly up to the space station, which I don't understand that at all. I mean, that doesn't make a bit of sense to me.
The original plan was for the shuttle program to go through 2020. I mean, we put people on the moon and we can't even put them in orbit now.
NASA should push a little bit harder, do more in publicity. We don't see enough of that. What are the benefits? I don't think that's well known.
The transition that we're seeing with commercial space activity and just NASA programs in general, you definitely see the pace picking up, the enthusiasm picking up, and it's an exciting time.
Well, for NASA, of course, their goal is a space launch system, and hopefully someday that will be taking humans to Mars. But it's not like going to the moon. You're talking like 3-year trip. So you have to be kind of like a Da Vinci character. Be able to do, if you need your appendix out, your buddy's going to have to do it for you.
I'm actually looking forward to the commercial space guys doing a lot more sooner. Knowing some of those people that are working out there, because they were with us on shuttle, again, they're very dedicated to what they do, so I think they'll be successful in the long run. And so I don't know about the mining thing, though. I haven't figured that one out yet. Going up and chasing a rock and trying to catch up with it and take stuff off it, I just don't know about that part of it. That's going to be tough.
It was a good career. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. We did a simulation about a month and a half before I retired. And the other old guy on the team, we were both in our 60s. And we did the tests and didn't have any problems. And some of the kids were laying there, they were pooped. They couldn't do it. They ran out of gas. And they said, how do you old guys do that? And I said, well, we pace ourselves. We learned how to do that a long, long time ago.
The workforce was dedicated. They didn't care what badge they wore. They didn't care who their boss was. They loved that program, and so that's what made it successful.
It's definitely a source of pride for me to be able to say that I was part of the process.
It's such a part of our life.
My wife gets bugged about it sometimes, always my head somewhere else.
I've never regretted a day of it. Every mission that comes along adds to what NASA does and what we learn every day you come to work. It's a little bit different.
I had one heck of a career. You know, looking across, I see that stuff, and you know, and it's special to me, very special to look across. But if you loved it and you did your best, that was the payoff to you.